Rural Heritage on RFD TV is brought to you by Rural Heritage Magazine, a bi-monthly magazine featuring articles about farming and logging with draft animal power, small-scale diversified family farming and homesteading, and other aspects of our rich rural heritage. Rural Heritage Magazine, borrowing from yesterday to do the work of today. For subscription information, please call 319-362-3027 or order online at www.ruralheritage.com.
Good afternoon, I'm Bryan Dale Headley, the Singing Blacksmith, and today we're going to take this 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch, it's about 10-inch long piece of square steel, and we're going to make us a nifty little drive-in wall hook for out in the barn. I'm sure most of you all got a barn or someplace that one of these would come in handy. Maybe you've seen some if you've been to a historical grounds or something that an old blacksmith had made where they drove those right into barn pegs. They might have tied something off on them. They might have hung some kind of harness work on them, what have you that way. But that's what we're going to show the demonstration on how to make one of those right now. And we'll make that for my old barn. So we're going to get us our tongs here. That way we don't burn our fingers, because we're going to be working with this short piece. As we get it hot out here, that heat's going to come up here, and by the time I work it very long, it's going to be hot all the way through. It may not be different color, but it's definitely going to be too hot for my little fingers to hold on to. So we're going to get our tongs here, get a good bite on this. There's a lot of different sizes of tongs, as you can see in here in my rack, and I've chosen this pair specifically because it has a very good hold on that piece. I don't want to hammer on this and that piece come flying out of that jaw. I want to maintain my control on my work. So we'll go into the fire here and we'll put that down in there a good bit. Being a 1/4 inch piece of steel, it's not going to take a tremendous amount of time for that to heat up inside there. It's already a good, well-established hot fire. So we'll give this a few turns on the blower. And that's this piece here I'm cranking on. We discussed before in other shows that we're going to push air underneath using this fan. The handle I'm cranking comes up into the coal, which is lit, burning hot. Adding air to the fire makes our fire burn hotter. Our hot burning fire makes our piece of steel take the heat lots quicker. As you can see, we're starting to do that already. We're going to get a little bit larger section of that heated up. What we're going to do first is we're going to form, we're going to draw out the end for our hook that we're actually going to make, and we're going to save that drive piece for last. Because if I make my 90-degree bend in it, it's going to be a little harder for me to handle when I'm trying to work out the hook end. So I'm going to come out here on the anvil, take the old hammer, I'm going to lay her out here. We're going to start to draw this down to a point. And as I'm doing this, since this piece is square, I'm trying to maintain squareness as I draw it down, and I'm turning it, as you see. Now the length of that is, the draw out part is strictly your personal preference. It depends on how long and slender you want it. A lot of things you can do with the end. We're going to just make a real simple, very primitive type with this one. I don't even think I'm going to put any kind of a scroll on it. I'm just going to make a very basic, drawn out wall hook that might look like it's been there for a long time. Similar to what a blacksmith would have made a long, long time ago. Of course, that end is a little bit thinner now, so it won't take as long to get the heat. About as thin on the end of that as I want to go. I'm just going to try to use my hammer to catch up to that. What I mean by that is I've got it a certain thickness out there on the end that I'm happy with. Now I'm drawing the rest of this out towards that to make a nice even flow. I don't want it to break off to a point real fast and long, and I don't want it to be blocky on the end and thinner back towards me where I'm hammering. I want that to have a nice even flow, and that looks pretty good right there. All right, now we're going to switch gears here a little bit. We're going to leave that alone for now. We're going to grab a hold of that. We're going to go back into the other end. We're going to put that hold into the fire, or the piece of steel into the fire. And as we put that hold in, and we haven't worked on that end yet, into the fire, we'll crank here a little bit. It's going to take the heat real well. And we'll come back out to the fire and we'll do the similar thing to it as we just did there. We'll come out here to the anvil. We don't need a whole lot on this end. Just a good point drawn down for that drive in. We want to maintain some pretty decent thickness to it to give it strength. We don't want to try to drive it in and then it bend or break. Work on that point just a little bit more. We want it to start in well. Alright, we probably go with that. Okay, we've got our first end drew out. That'll be the end with the hook in it. Now the next end, the other end, we're going to want to put a bend in it in a 90, and I'm going to do the 90 first, and then we'll point the end of that after we get our bend made, because we want as flat of a corner on that as what we can possibly get. That way we got something for our hammer to hit against. If it's rounded this way, it's kind of hard to drive in. You hit your hammer with it, your hammer wants to go off in an angle. So we want something flat for our hammer to go against when we drive it into the wall or our board or whatever a person would do or drive it into. So we'll come out to the edge of the anvil and we'll make our first bend. So we want to get square. We're going to true that up a little bit. We're going to be back and forth here a little bit. Now we're going to come this way. We're going to drive some of that back down and try to get us somewhat of a 90. Okay, that's close. We're going to work on that just a little bit more. I'd like to get that hot right there, just exactly where that bend was. A bigger piece of steel, we'd draw a little bit out right there on that 90-degree bend and work on it a little different than I did this one, but with a 1/4 inch, there just ain't a whole lot there to play with in the first place. So instead of drawing that out and going through that, which is a lot more tedious and time consuming, I'm going to try to force it since it's small. I'm going to come to the quench bucket there and quench that in just a little. Come back to the anvil. Work that out. Okay, I'm going to go with that. That's pretty close. There's just a little bit at the top corner there that you're not going to make a perfect corner with that with this size of steel hardly, but that's really close. I'm going to live with that. Now, we want to take this here and make us a point on that to where it will drive into something. And as you notice, I kept it small and I kept it short because we don't want to drive it in a foot or have to drive it in any further than what we actually need to make sense to hold it in there. So, you know, that's a 1/2 inch, a little bit larger, 1/2 inch, 5/8 size. We'll draw that out. We're going to gain a little bit more, and hopefully whenever we drive it in just right, the back side will flush right up to the post. So we'll go back in the fire and we'll heat up that end. Once we get that end done, we'll jump to the other end and make our hook. I don't want to make the hook yet because then I got to fight wrestling that around at the same time. It's going to be heavier on one end when it's hanging down. The other end will be at the top. It's just a little harder to work with. It's easier to work with it when you just got everything lined up and straight to do what we're going to do. All right, we'll come out here to the anvil. We'll put us a little point on this. I'm going to use the front of the anvil. All right. Using that anvil for different ways. We don't always just hammer on the top. As you notice, I use the sides. I use every bit of that anvil to do whatever I need it to do. That's what it's there for. All right, that don't look too bad. Maybe just a little bit more straight there. So I think that'll drive into a post. Believe it will. Maybe just a little true up here and there. Still hot enough to bend. So okay, that'll work. Let's go back to the forge now. We need to work on our other side. Get us a nice good hold here. Now we always want to remember which end's driving in. We don't want to put our hook on the other side. We can always twist it to the other side, which in a square piece is going to make a nice decorative twist. We could do that. Why don't we just do that too? But we're going to concentrate on putting the hook opposite of our drive in. That way if you just always want to remember to do it that way, and then if we want to twist it, we can twist it and still keep it correct. We'll let that soak up a little heat, and we'll come over here and we'll get the cone. I like to make my loops on the cone. This was a good friend of mine's cone, and I got it from him. He was a blacksmith for most of his life, and I like to show that off anytime and tell his story just a little bit. My good friend Rex Walden, who is hammering out horseshoes in heaven right now. All right, we'll come out here to the cone, and we'll come out here about where that starts to get cold, and we'll start to turn our loop. Now, depending on what you want to hook with this, depends on the size of the area of the cone that we want to make the steel take the shape to. If we come down here, we're going to take up more room of our shaft. Our hook's going to be larger. So just to demonstrate that, why don't we do that? Let's say we decided that there wasn't a large enough hook for what we want to use it for. All we got to do is go back to the fire, heat up another little bit more section of that, and we'll come back out here to the cone and we'll hammer down on that a little bit, open that up, and we'll take what we need off that shaft and kind of rob from it to make our hook a little bigger. So there we go. We'll open this up a little bit. We'll come back out here a little. And now we just opened that up. And it was very easy. I got a little flat spot in it. We'll come out here, we'll hit her lick or two out there like that. We'll come to the anvil and straighten it out a little bit and true it up with the rest of the shaft. So there we got our basic shape for that. There's endless possibilities of what we want to do with that. We can curl that around a little bit more very easily. Still hot. Tighten it up a little bit by hammering back on it a little bit. There, I like the looks of that a little better. Got a little bit better flow. There is no mistakes in blacksmithing. Maybe happy accidents. I might rob that from Bob Ross, but he was right. Just happy accidents. All we got to do is go back, heat it up, straighten it out, make it do what we want it to do. Keep trying till it works. Okay, so our hook is basically done. If we want to put us a nice little decorative twist up in here in the shaft, I think that'd really set that piece off. So let's go back here to the fire and take us a little bit more heat. All right, we're just taking a little heat here while we're getting ready for our twist. If you got round stock, if it's, say we made this out of a piece of round 1/4 inch, unless it had any kind of squareness to it, if you think about this being round and you turn it, you're not gonna see any kind of a twist. You have to have a square part of that. Okay, we're gonna come out of here, we're gonna go to the vise, and we're gonna set this in the vise and prepare for a twist. Now I'm gonna go into the vise as far as I want my twist to stop, and I'm gonna take my pliers up here as far up as I want my twist to start. And then that'll keep it contained in that area alone. And we're going to come around here and true it all up square, because we know our hook end is there, our drive end is that way, and outside of making sure it's in line, that little rascal is done. There isn't a thing wrong with that. So we'll find our wire brush, give it a little cleanup job here, clean the flakes off of the twist. Those flakes, you might wonder, what is that? That's just stress of the steel, and parts of it flake off as you twist it. So now we've got our nice little drive-in hook. We can drive that in, hang whatever you might want to hang in there on that. I grew up with this old barn in my life, and I've just grown to love it. Some of my best, fondest childhood memories were being out here with my grandparents and great-grandparents. At that time, they raised hogs and cattle, as well as a grain farm, but this farm was mostly for pasture, where the barn is, and I just loved coming up here on weekends and messing with the cows and tending fence and all those things that go along with farm life. Just was in my blood. I was raised that way, and I've never lost my love for that life. And as the years went by, the old barn changed owners through my family after the passing of my grandfather in 1985. He'd raised animals here. I'm not even sure when he started, but a long time, as well as my great-grandparents. But in '85, my grandfather passed away, and my uncle Bill took over this farm, and he raised cattle here till around 1990. And after 1990, the farm went downhill pretty severely. The old barn started going downhill pretty fast. Some of the roof came off during storms and rusted through, and the water damage from that, a lot of rot and decay. The lean-to that's off on the west side of the barn suffered the worst. And I'd come out here different times and hunt the creek that runs down this property and think, boy, if I ever got the chance to buy this farm, I wish I could live here. And I never really knew if I'd ever get that opportunity. And finally one day, years later, and the old barn went downhill and the lean-to was all but fell in, I got the opportunity to buy this place. And that's been about 6, 7 years ago now. And my wife and I had made up our minds, if we ever did get a chance to buy this place, we were going to fix the old barn up and try to bring it back to the way she used to be in her glory day when she was built. And we're still in the process of working on this old barn. This year we'll start in again and do the north side, and we'll be replacing all the doors, and I'm going to make all the hinge work. A lot of those hinges are being out of shape and not any good anymore, and I'm going to put my mark on this barn for future generations that come after me with my ironwork for hinges and hardware and things like that. So that'll be my touch for the old barn. But I wrote a song about her life, and it's her true story about how she's kind of grew up and how I grew up with her. And I'd like to share that with you if you'd like. And the name of this song is This Old Barn, and we hope you enjoy it. The old barn stands all alone on the knoll, overlooking green meadows and the valleys far below. She stood long and tall and proud in the middle of this farm, and she's seen the changes through the ages. This old barn. My great-grandpa put her up in the year of 29, and he sawed the logs to build her and his mill one at a time. An oak would be the coat that she would wear in all her charm, and she's seen the changes through the ages. This old barn. But she stood the sun, the wind, the rain, the cold, the blowing snow, and she's seen the generations of the family come and go. She's kept the hay high and dry and kept the stock from harm, and she's seen the changes through the ages. This old barn. My grandpa hammered nails and he brought the barn to life, and he started up a family of 4 children and a wife. She watched the family grow and seen many a life be born. She's seen the changes through the ages. This old barn. But she stood the sun, the wind, the rain, the cold, the blowing snow, and she's seen the generations of the family come and go. She's kept the hay high and dry and kept the stock from harm, and she's seen the changes through the ages. This old barn. My daddy, he milked cows there all through his growing years, and the old barn has stood there through the good times and the tears. Now many a men who build her up from this old world are torn, and she's seen the ways and the better days. This old barn. But she stood the sun, the wind, the rain, the cold, the blowing snow, and she's seen 5 generations of my family come and go. She's kept the hay high and dry and kept the stock from harm, and she's seen the ways and the better days. This old barn. Now the pastures are all empty and the fence is falling down. I can see the sadness in her eyes, upon her face a frown. The memories are all that's left for her out on the farm, and she's seen the ways and the better days. This old barn. But one day I will shine her up and make her new again. I'll wipe the sadness from her eyes, upon her face a grin, and she'll stand another 100 years on this piece of land she's on, and she'll see the ways and the better days. This old barn. This old barn. This old barn. My old barn. All right, we got our little J-hook made. Let's go in here and find us a nice little place to drive this in. All right, little true up right there. Being square like that was, that thing ain't gonna want to turn. So it's in there good and tight. I think I got just the thing. I do a lot of fencing out here. So antique girl. Instead of hanging off one of those beams. There, we'll just hang that right there so I can always find it. It's on the right side of the post instead of the wrong. I'll be able to find it.
This program is available for purchase. To order your copy, please call 319-362-3027 or visit www.ruralheritage.com. Rural Heritage is a bi-monthly magazine dedicated to draft animal farming and logging, as well as other aspects of our rich rural heritage. It is published by Mishka Press, which also offers a complete line of back-to-the-land books, DVDs, and calendars. Call or write for a catalog or subscription information, or visit our website at www